It is entirely possible to know every hymn, serve on every church committee, and never once cross the street to help someone in desperate need. We easily fall into the trap of the shrinking circle. We become so devoted to the needs of our own congregation and our own family in the faith that we subconsciously wall off the outside world. This instinct to isolate is nothing new. In the Gospel of Luke, a legal expert stands up to test Jesus with a very specific question. Who is my neighbor? The lawyer already knew the law. He asked because he was looking for offense. He wanted Jesus to draw a hard line in the sand, dictating exactly where his obligation to love was required to reach, so he could comfortably ignore everyone past that point. 2,000 years later, who is my neighbor is the exact same question hiding underneath a great deal of respectable Christian living. It allows us to carefully manage our compassion while we walk right past the broken world Jesus died for. Jesus answers the lawyer with the story of a man traveling the isolated road from Jerusalem to Jericho. The man is beaten by robbers, stripped, and left half dead in the dirt. A priest comes down that same road, sees the bleeding man, and passes by on the other side. A Levite arrives shortly after and does the exact same thing. These men weren't villains. They acted out of strict religious duty bound by Leviticus 21. Touching a dead body rendered a priest ceremonially unclean, disqualifying him from temple duties. To maintain purity, the religious system required him to keep his distance. Their attention was entirely consumed by the obligations of their own religious camp. They were so busy being devout that a dying human being was treated as nothing more than an obstacle to their faithfulness. Then a Samaritan comes down the road. As a man from a people despised by Jews, he had every social and religious excuse to keep walking. Instead, he stops. In the Greek text, his actions redefine the concept of a neighbor. The word is plesion. It literally translates to the one who is near. A neighbor is determined only by physical proximity and need, not kinship or religion. The text uses another specific word to describe why the Samaritan stopped, splanchnizomai. This is a gut-level, visceral compassion. It is an overwhelming physical response to suffering that forces a person into inconvenient movement toward the person in pain. The Samaritan used his own oil, his own animal, and his own money to see the healing through. He didn't necessarily have better theology than the priest. He had better eyes. He saw a human being in need rather than a religious boundary. This kind of boundary-breaking compassion requires actual physical risk. In the summer of 1873, a cholera epidemic swept through the streets of Nashville, Tennessee. The disease killed close to 1,000 people in a matter of weeks, disproportionately ravaging the poor and the African American community. David Lipscomb, a prominent church leader in the city, rejected the instinct to build a protective fence around his congregation. He refused to let the church wait the danger out. He organized young men from the local churches to walk directly into infected homes. They did the grueling work of nursing the sick and the dying, regardless of whether those victims had ever set foot inside their church building. These Christians traded the safety of their religious circle for the danger of the road. Their actions proved that genuine faith moves directly towards suffering rather than hiding from it. Back on the road to Jericho, Jesus finishes his story, and he chooses to leave the lawyer's original question unanswered. Jesus redirects the focus of the entire conversation. He moves away from the legal search for a boundary and points toward the active character of the person doing the loving. The lawyer asked, "Who must I love?" to manage his obligations. Jesus asks, "Who will you become?" to set a trajectory. The question is no longer about who qualifies for our love, but about whether we will be people who move toward need. The story ends not with the definition to be memorized, but with a direct command: you go and do likewise. That command brings the challenge to our own front doors. We easily share a table with those in our Sunday pews, but we often remain strangers to the person living literally next door. The Apostle Paul instructed the Galatians to do good to everyone, and especially to the household of faith. Our brothers and sisters in Christ are the priority, but they were never meant to be the whole circle. Costly, inconvenient action gives the gospel weight. It provides a tangible reason for someone to listen when we finally speak about the grace that motivated us to stop in the first place. The physical healing on the Jericho road was a reflection of a much larger restoration. Just as the Samaritan addressed a bleeding wound with oil and wine, our compassion prepares the way to address the deeper, spiritual trauma that every neighbor carries. Look at your own path this week and find out who is bleeding on your road. When we step outside our comfortable circles to help, we are finally following the command to go and do likewise.